Hi, everybody. It's Maura at Trifecta and a little bit extra. And today I have the pleasure of talking to Carrie Brogden. She is with Machmer and she created Machmer in 2001 in Paris, Kentucky. So, those of you who don't know Carrie, Carrie is like the trifecta of horse racing. She is a breeder, she's into the sales, and she's an owner. So, thank you, Carrie, for joining me today.
Thank you so much for asking me. The
So
trifecta. I like that. That's
you
a that's
are,
a very clever name.
you're the trifecta.
Mm.
I realize that you are involved very deeply in the sport, but a lot of people who watch my videos are just beginners. So can you tell us a
Great.
little bit more about your operations? What do you specialize in? How many horses did you start with? How many horses you have
Okay.
now?
Well, I was really technically born into the industry. My parents are both small animal veterinarians, and my dad and my mom had a farm in Virginia. And my mom had bought an old stallion off Claiborne named Clem. And he stood at their Virginia farm. And my mom used to go, I remember as a kid, she'd get these big, giant red pedigree books because nothing was digital at the time. So
Right.
she would go through all these pedigree books and she would claim fillies inexpensively on the track and they'd breed them to Clem and they'd sell them pregnant. And that actually worked. I mean, you got to consider at the time the full crop was in the 50,000 range.
Yeah.
So it was a
Yeah.
completely different era in the
Right.
thoroughbreds. And then my dad wanted warmer weather. So we moved down to Florida and we had a farm called Terra Farm for several years down there in Ocala. And then unfortunately they got divorced and my mom moved back from Virginia and they liquidated the entire broodmare band right before the crash in the 80s, right
Oh,
before they
wow.
changed the tax laws in 80, 85, 86. So actually, they were unlucky to get divorced, but
Mhm.
lucky that they sold everything before the market crash, or it'd have been a lot worse.
Mm.
Anyway, so then after when I was in college, my mom started getting back into it, and she ended up starting buying some more mares in Virginia, and we rented the old Buckland farm, which is a pretty famous farm in Gainesville, Virginia, and it
Yeah.
was right down the road. My mom had bought back, believe it or not, the family farm that her and my dad had shared, and they had riding horses there. So she leased Buckland, a part of Buckland Farm, and had the thoroughbreds there. So at that time, had graduated college, and I was dating a guy for a long time, like 3.5 years. And I remember when he broke, I thought we were going to be, anyway, he told me at the end, he's like, "You love horses more than you love me." And he's probably right. He's probably very wise and he is absolutely right. So I actually picked up and left Virginia and moved to Kentucky. And I met my husband Craig, who's Australian, at McCarthy's literally in January. And I moved there this summer in April or spring, and we bought our farm at auction in April of that year. And Craig and I have been together now and married over 20 years, and he's been the GM for a long time. So it's amazing how things just
That
kind of work together.
that's
Um,
incredible, and you're
mhm.
doing what you love. You love horses, so you're doing
Oh
what you love.
gosh, I mean, I love it. I live it. When I get up, sometimes in the middle of the night, the first thing I'm doing is reading all the results in Australia,
I
and
love
like they
that.
have a big sale today, and I
Yeah.
was reading all the results there, and yes, and I think in order to have success in this industry,
Mhm.
you have to live it, and if you do not personally live it, you have to hire an agent that lives it
Yeah.
because it's tightening. It's been tightening since I was a
Mhm.
kid, but
Mhm.
now the full crop is in the 17,000. So a lot of the people left standing
Unbelievable.
are,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of people left standing are the professionals.
So one of
So
your big claims to fame, one of them, is Tepin. So you are the
yeah.
woman that gave us Tepin. And again, if you weren't into horse racing back in the 2015, 2016, maybe you don't know who Tepin is, but Tepin was a champion filly,
Hmm.
multiple graded one stakes winner, winner of
Hmm.
Ascot, Breeders' Cup winner, beat the boys a few times. We love that,
Yeah.
right? And she was inducted into both the Canadian and American Hall of Fame.
Mhm.
So you have this great story of how Tepin came to be and how you obtained her dam, Life Happened. Do you mind recounting that for us?
Sure. Well, we were at the sale and Life Happened, who's the Dam of Tepin, was selling, and they were in the last book of the Keeneland November sale. And I think it actually was book 7 back then. Now they don't have book 6 and 7s, but because the market's getting smaller. But I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure she was either in book 6 or book 7. But anyway, we had seen her foal, a Bernstein colt, at foot. And I was like, wow, it's so amazing. So I was not in town at the time, but I told my husband, my mom and my husband went up there to buy the baby. And then
Mhm.
I texted him and I was like, hey, by the way, did anyone see that the mare is right in front? So they ended up buying the mare for peanuts right in front of this foal. And then, of course, with underbidder on the foal because Xavier Moreau outbid us, which, ugh. So then we had the mare, but we didn't buy the
Yeah,
foal.
yeah.
And so then, like within a couple days later, we had some Australians inquire, and they offered us to buy her for
Wow.
a $5,000 profit, the mare. And I wanted to sell her because we didn't buy the foal. My mom's like, "Don't do it, don't do it." And finally, somehow, we strong armed my mom to agreeing to sell for a $5,000 profit. Well, luckily, the Australian buyers that asked us, they never came up with the money.
Oh, wow.
So we owned the mare. And in the meantime, the Bernstein that we were the underbidder on, he went on to bring $475,000
Oh,
as a
wow.
yearling. He became a graded stakes horse named Prime Cut. And actually, I actually ended up getting him back as an OTTB after following his career. And he went to my sister's, who has a show hunter farm in Virginia for
Yeah.
placement, and he was sold, and he actually won some major award in being one of the top field hunting
Wow.
horses in Virginia. So
Yeah.
I have this big like plaque of like picture of his plaque and award from that. So anyway, so then we had Life Happened, and I wanted to repeat. We thought the Bernstein colt was so gorgeous that
Yeah.
I wanted to repeat that mating. By the way, that is a C Nick mating, which anyway, but
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so I wanted,
Sometimes that those
yeah,
nicks
sometimes.
don't really add up to the quality that you're getting in those foals.
Well, I just encourage people to breed for the physical and not for the Nick. But
Yeah.
anyway, because the physical, when you go around and you're in the paddocks of the Derby and the Oaks, you look around and
Mhm.
they're not too many little dinky rats there.
No, no.
So we wanted a breeder to Bernstein, and he was full. He was full. He was full. Couldn't get in. Couldn't get in. He already had 3 mares on the day she needed to be bred. Couldn't get her in, so we had to call an audible. The morning that Life Happened was supposed to be bred, and I called over to Spencer Farm where my friend Ken Wilkins worked. And I was like, "Hey, what do you guys have over there?" And he's like, "Oh, well, we have this new freshman sire named Into Mischief." And I'm like, well, okay, he's got a spot. I'm like, and I knew he wasn't a big horse, but this is a big mare.
Yeah.
So that was right about 11 a.m. She had the afternoon breeding, so it was 1 o'clock. So that's how quick this was done. So we bred her to Into Mischief instead of Bernstein. And
Mhm.
that was Into Mischief's first graded stakes winner by Jack. And
Unbelievable.
yeah,
So
and Vajak
all the
actually,
research you
yeah.
do is amazing, but sometimes it's the stars align and the
Oh,
chances
totally.
happen, and yes. Yes.
Oh, totally. And I knew he was small, and
Mhm.
he's well known for throwing smaller horses, but the sophisticated buyers they all breed bigger mares to him, get some stretch.
Yeah.
But yes. And it's funny, Vijak is actually retired on our farm.
Oh, that's great.
He's at the Hill Barn. He's babysitting yearling colts.
Oh, that's
I
great.
actually saw him and visited him yesterday. So he's retired. And then so the next year we wanted to repeat the mating once again. So
Mhm.
we went back to Bernstein, and that breeding was Tepin.
Tepin.
So it's funny because
Yeah.
if she had gotten into Tepin the year before, Vijak and Tepin wouldn't have existed. It's
Right.
amazing how
Right.
the fates, like you said,
Yeah.
sometimes you have best laid plans and
Yeah.
fate steps in and it's all better anyway.
We show all the success that you've had in the sport, and you're this strong woman, and you alluded to it. It's a tough sport. There's a lot of ups and downs in this sport.
Oh
And
yeah, you get a really thick skin for disasters because of it, unfortunately.
and I have read that you dedicate a lot of your time to helping newcomers into the sport, especially women. So that really tells me you must have had like that strong woman role model in your life. Who was the one woman that was the most influential to you, and what did she teach you?
Oh gosh, that's an easy one. My mom, no doubt. My mom, Sandy. She
Yeah,
she actually gave my sister and I a shirt last year, and it said "Strong women raise strong children."
that's right. That's right.
So yeah, no, definitely my mom. Very lucky. She's healthy and spry, and
I love
yeah,
this.
I probably
Yeah.
don't tell her
And it's
enough, but she's
on the eve of Mother's Day too. So this is
yeah.
great. This is great.
Sounds
Yeah,
like
my
a
mom brought
strong
me into
woman to
the
me. Well,
sport.
the thought of my mom makes it like,
I
because
know.
my mom's getting older now. She's
Mhm.
in her mid 70s. I won't give her exact age, but definitely my mom. All four of us kids, two of us are involved in horses, and two of us aren't. But everyone is super successful and driven, and I have no doubt that the majority of that comes from the absolute strength of my mother.
I can totally relate. I have a very strong mom. She brought me into the sport as a lover of like the wagering and the handicapping and things
Oh,
like
interesting.
that.
So very different.
Very
Mhm.
different, and if it wasn't for her, like, bringing me in and having the passion and going to the racing with her,
Yeah.
I would have never had done this. So, moms are great supporters. I'm a mom, so I'm hoping my kids
Yeah.
say the same thing about me.
Yeah. Well, I have three. My oldest son is a computer science kid. My middle daughter wants to be a doctor, but my youngest
Yeah.
is a jumper rider, and she wants to be a Grand Prix rider. And
Oh,
it's so
that's
funny
great.
because she always says to me, "Mom, aren't you so lucky you had dad and you had a third kid?" And I'm like, it's true. It is true. It is true. Anyway, but yeah, it's great to have. I think I think that's a little bit of what we're missing a little bit some now in this generation is the strength and the mothers to be like, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
get your crap together.
You're clearly very passionate about the sport, so I'm hoping you could finish this sentence for me. The one thing that I, meaning you, not me, the one thing I can do to advance the sport, keep it relevant and viable is.
Well, I would say probably two things. Number one, being acutely aware of the next generation
Mhm.
coming up. As you said, we have the Thoroughbred Ladies Cocktail Club group on Facebook, and I'm very aware that when I was young and starting out, there weren't easy ways of meeting people that were established
Mhm.
and successful in the industry. So
Right.
that's been a big part of what Katie Taylor, actually Katie Taylor from TaylorMade, and I
Mhm.
started the Thoroughbred Ladies Cocktail Club, and it's been fabulous. It really
Oh, that's
has.
great.
Actually, we're going to do a happy hour next week. Anyway, so that's something that we've really enjoyed. And then the second thing is awareness of second careers and OTTBs. As
Mhm.
you can tell,
Mhm.
I've hunted down, yeah, I've been very, that's my second passion.
Yeah.
First passion racing, second passion OTTBs and rehoming. I'm very proactive, not just with the horses that we have personally had, but
Yeah.
in general. I try never to say no to somebody. We have an OTTB arm of our farm that is run by Caitlin Yellick, who works for Judmont, and it has been not only successful in placement, but truly emotionally successful for me and her and
Yeah.
these horses that
Yeah.
go on. And we have one that actually just went through my sister, and he's going to go, his name is Fully Frosted, that we got through Bradley Thoroughbreds, and his nickname is Puddles, which is the cutest barn name of all time, I told Devin. But anyway, he is being pointed for the RRP, and he's so nice and likes going so slow that we actually think he has a big shot of being a potential winner of the RP. So, so that's that whole part. I really think is focusing on all the great things that
Right.
are out there with aftercare.
Yes.
People aren't
Yes.
aware it is actually absolutely booming now.
Mhm.
And there are people like Jessica Redmond, and there's a lot of people that retrain the
Mhm.
thoroughbreds that are professional, that retrain the thoroughbreds for the amateurs. And so to me, I think it's just making public awareness of that kind of
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
that growing grassroots thing.
They give us so much enjoyment on the racetrack. Taking care of them, like, after retirement is really important, and rehoming and repurposing, and for those of you who aren't aware, there are a lot of programs out there that you could support. There's lots of ways to give back to this sport.
Well,
It's
and the Jockey Club has also created a program with the CIP program, the Thoroughbred Incentive Program, which is basically allows horse thoroughbreds to show, creates their own shows.
Yeah.
But the warm bloods are so expensive in the show hunter world now. I mean, that's what my daughter has is warm bloods, and I'm like, how much? Oh my God! And the great, I tell people the show hunters, the thoroughbred is the poor man's warm blood, or like if people didn't know, it's crazy. They literally bring 10 to 20% of the value of a warm blood if it was the same horse. And
Yeah.
people didn't know it was a thoroughbred. But there's
Right.
a so it's trying to shed that stigma. And I said, instead of forcing people to be like, you will take this OTTB or you will have a thoroughbred when you don't want, say, well, you would spend 200,000 on this warm blood, but you
Mhm.
can get this packing 3-foot horse that has perfect auto changes and whatever, and it's a thoroughbred, and it costs $20,000. And when they go
Unbelievable.
into the ring,
Yeah.
the judges don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
well, they can tell sometimes with the movement, but there are plenty of times where I have been at WEC in Florida and some of these other shows where there's thoroughbreds easily competing side by side against the warm bloods,
Yeah.
and they're great value.
Different subject. You had Steel Sunshine last
Yeah,
week in the Ali Sheba.
the slop. Yeah.
It's okay. Good days and bad
It's
days.
the
We all
first
have them,
time he
right?
ever ran of that slop. We didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, he's had,
Yeah.
I think, 22 starts, but we had no, he'd never run an off track.
Yeah.
So we didn't know
Yeah.
how he's
It
going to
was
handle it. So,
it was a really messy day at Churchill on Oaks Day last week.
but a
So
safe day,
yeah.
but yes, very messy. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Steel Sunshine. So, did you give him the name after the song? He's got his own walk-up song,
I
which
did.
has been stuck in my head ever since
Did.
we talked
I
last week.
did. He's named after a lot of my horses are named after his mother's name is Warm Sunshine. And oh my gosh. The Chris one of Chris Caudle's song. My brain's not working. I
That's
forget
okay.
what band he was. Stone. Oh my gosh. Anyway, Warm Sunshine is named after a song, and then I love the song by Len,
Yeah,
Steel Sunshine, and
yeah.
so that is why he was named. Yeah, because we actually had him as a 2-year-old with top line, and he bucked his shin
Oh,
as a 2-year-old, and that's why we had to stop on him and gave him time, and we ended up
mhm.
racing him instead of selling him. And so normally we don't name him, so he wasn't named until he got scratched from the 2-year-old
Yeah,
sale.
yeah. So, what kind of quirks does Sunshine have that, his little personality quirks that would endear us to him?
Well, the only race he has ever run where he did not um, put in his best was the grade one at Churchill last year, and he came in the paddock area like a riding horse, like dull. I mean, they put on his saddle, he didn't care, and I'm like, oh, this is not good because in Pat, he is very difficult to saddle, just like he was
Okay.
when he ran here at fourth in the grade two.
Yeah.
He is on his toes and he has a constitution. He is a little bit on
Mhm.
the hot blooded side.
Mhm.
So if he is not acting up in the paddock, as in they have to put the saddle on while he is moving, other
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
otherwise he'll rear. So if he is not acting up, then I would worry. If
Yeah.
he's being tough and they can barely get the saddle on him, then he's probably going to have a very good race. So
And that's
that's the funniest thing about him.
I had owned like shares of horses with Commonwealth. So I had We the People, who I think
Oh,
who is also a
yes, very well.
constitution horse. So yeah, hot
Yes.
blooded. For sure, hot-blooded.
But see, as a yearling, he was
Yeah,
not. We
yeah,
the People was completely laid back.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
when Rudolph told me that he was a handful, I'm like, really?
Yes.
Oh, because
Yes.
as a yearling, he was easy as pie. But yes, I think that the hormones and they get older and the hot bloodness.
Yeah.
Yes, We the People. Yeah, beautiful walking horse. Yeah, he was one of our pinhooks.
That was one of my most favorite memories was him going to the Belmont because I took my mom. So my mom and I, she was in a wheelchair at the time. So I
Oh,
pushed her down to see the races, like right by the track. Somehow we ended up in the winner's circle. I don't know how. We just kind of got shuffled in there.
yeah.
And the police officer was like, "Okay, you could stay here, but if your horse doesn't win, you need
You
to
have to
get
move.
out of there." So, of course, he didn't win, but because of all the throngs of people coming into the winner's circle, we just got stuck. And I
Oh
looked
my
at the
God.
police officer and he said, "Just stay." And so
Yeah.
we're in all of the the winner's circles
Oh my gosh, that's
pictures for
great.
the Belmont because of that.
Yeah, but how great is that now that you look back
You're
and you
right,
think what an important time,
right.
an event with your mom, and that's all
Event with
through
my
horse
mom.
racing.
And
Yep.
that's what I associate horse racing with, is all those
Yeah.
wonderful memories with my mom.
He was a beautiful horse. I saw he just got sold as a stallion prospect.
Yeah.
So,
So
that's wonderful.
one last question for you, Carrie. So some of
Sure.
the best advice that we get is advice we wish we had. So if you go back to your 2001 self, what advice would you give yourself as you're first creating Machmer?
There is so much, hindsight's 2020. Whether I'm like, breed 50 mares to into mischief first year instead of two. I think that my biggest advice, my younger self, would be make sure you have a more open mind. I was typical of my 20s that I, got to Kentucky and then within 6 months I felt like I knew it all. And I don't think until I got a little bit further into it, I realized that ugh, I think that's why a lot of very successful businessmen and women come into the thoroughbred industry and think that they can, oh, it's easy, it's simple. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
So I think my advice to myself be I've learned to have an open mind more, but I wish I'd done more mentor. I mean, excuse me. I wish I'd contacted more and learned more and listened more.
Mhm.
And people that know me are going to be like, "You don't listen anymore." But in my heart, I feel like I do listen more. I feel like now that I understand it, um, in all growing up with the horses and now in the industry in Lexington, now I try to observe super successful people and then
Mhm.
take things that work in their program
Yeah.
that aren't necessarily in my own. So,
Oh, that's great advice. That's great advice. Well,
yeah.
thank you. Carrie, thank you for talking to me today and agreeing to the
Thank
interview.
you.
And I just
Yes,
had
and
a
hopefully,
wonderful time.
hopefully people will join the once again on Facebook, the Thoroughbred Ladies Cocktail Club.
Yes,
There's a whole bunch of there's newbies in there, there's fans in there, there's absolute successful women in there. Any young person interested in thoroughbreds, please come join our group.
oh, that's great. I'm definitely gonna join.
Well, it's amazing how much passion, people, passion is part of what people will follow. I mean, if you love it and
Right.
people can feel that. That's all sales really is a transfer of energy from one person to another.
Yeah.
And I love what I do. I love the horses. I mean, I was with the farrier yesterday and I was just scratching on one of the yearlings mane and I was like, these are the most they're I mean, I love dogs and cats too, but
Right.
these are such amazing animals. And I forget until I have people that are from the city or whatever come to the farm and I
Mhm.
forget how special it
They're
is to
magical.
people. Yeah, to people
Magic.
to touch these horses, to walk through. I mean,
Mhm.
call me. We'll go through in the summer and spring, we'll walk through the fields with the mares and foals, and just walking through the fields is so, it's just awesome. And I forget, I don't want to take that for granted because I do that so much,
Yeah,
or that's what I have. I have to remember how special that is to other people.
that's wonderful. Well, thank you, Carrie. I really enjoyed talking to you today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a joy.